It turns out the NFC East is not the least, at least through 5 weeks of the season. We got a Thursday night game that has a chance to be worse than last week's Thursday night game, and one coach has been fired already, but who is next? That and more on this week's edition of The Huddle, presented by OddsChecker. Pat Mayo here with your Week 6 edition, alongside Pam Maldonado, Brian Matthews, and Ross Tucker. Let's start with the NFC East. The top 3 teams are a combined 13-2, just like we all expected coming into the season. And this week, we got a Sunday night showdown between 2 of those teams. The last remaining undefeated Philadelphia Eagles, 5-point favorites against the Dallas Cowboys. Pam, I want to start off with you in this game. Is this just a case of, there's a lot of points for not only a division game, but between 2 teams that are eerily close at the moment?
I am going to be upfront and honest. I have already bet the Cowboys. I live in Texas. This is not a biased bet. I am not a Cowboys fan, but I am entirely against this Eagles team because I just don't believe that they are as legit as people want to make them out to me. Great offense, absolutely, but I am fading them in this spot against the Cowboys for 2 reasons. Number 1, injuries to the offensive line. 3 starters, all questionable. The starting center, Jason Kelce, had an ankle sprain in the last game against Arizona. Micah Parsons against Jalen Hurts. I'm absolutely looking forward to that matchup because in the last 2 games, Hurts has 0 passing touchdowns, 1 interception, 4 sacks, and is horrendous against pressure, as most quarterbacks are, but he's 25th in pressured completion percentage and 27th in red zone accuracy. Second reason why I'm fading the Eagles, the lack of second half production. You cannot be a favorite in any game and not score points in the second half. The Eagles offense, 29th in second half points. In 5 games, 0 points in the fourth quarter to the Lions, 0 points in the second half against the Vikings, 0 points in the second half against Washington, 9 points only from turnovers against the Jaguars, and 2 field goals in the second half against the Cardinals. I trust this Dallas defense. I do not trust this Eagles offense.
Pat, hold on a second real quick. Can I check on – does anybody know what the Eagles' record is? Let me check. My glasses are a little foggy real quick. Pam, you sound like the Eagles haven't won a game yet this year. They're the only undefeated team in the NFL. They objectively have the best roster in the NFL. They haven't scored that many points in the second half because they haven't had to. Don't worry about Kelce and Dickerson. They're playing. We'll find out about Mailata later in the week. It's good against good. I will give you that. And I got to tell you, if anything, I would lean Dallas because of the points they're getting and because of their defense. But this Eagles team is very good. Love them on the money line. Love them to win the game outright. But where the points are right now, I would lean Dallas. Not a strong play for me either way because I want to know more about the injuries as we get closer.
Yeah, I'd lean Dallas points as well. I mean, just looking at them, I think Philadelphia, like Ross said, I'm going to agree with him. Their roster, top to bottom, is as stacked as anyone in the league. And Pam, I know we were talking last week, you weren't a believer. I think they come out. I do lean here. I think the points are a little much, but I do think Philadelphia wins. I don't think it's a look-ahead game because Philly's next 4 games, they don't really have anybody. So this is going to mean a lot to them. I think they'll come out firing and, come out with the win here.
I grabbed 5.5. The line is already down to 4.5. So I feel good whether it works out or not. I trust the defense more so than anything.
I can imagine the Cowboys being the popular side this week, just like they were last week against the Rams, and I foolishly went with the Rams, being like, well, if everyone's going to be on the Cowboys, a public underdog, no way I can be on them. Wrong. Turns out that all of the popular underdogs last week all just kind of came through or won outright. So that was horrible to my pocketbook. So we're not going to try to make those mistakes, at least on my end, yet again. But Carolina, they made a mistake. Ross, they hired Matt Rule in the first place, and now he was the first coach fired. But now we have the board up of who is going to be the next coach fired or the temporarily resign, or however they're wording it based on what happened to John Gruden last year. So eventually it was Matt Rule. He was a 2-1 favorite to be the first coach fired. Now Nathaniel Hackett is the odds-on favorite to be the next coach fired. He's 2-1. Cliff Kingsbury is 3-1. Ron Rivera 5-1. Frank Reich 6-1. Pete Carroll, Mike Tomlin, Josh McDaniels. I don't think we need to really worry about Pete Carroll and Mike Tomlin in this discussion, though, Ross.
No, I don't either. And in fact, I don't really see another coach being fired during the season. That would surprise me, just looking at the board, looking at the options. I do think the closest one is probably Frank Reich. I think if anybody goes down, it's Frank Reich. Jim Irsay was not happy with the way last season ended, and the Colts owner made it very clear all offseason that he expected this franchise to get back to the playoffs. They got rid of Wentz. Irsay said about 10 times how much he couldn't stand Wentz. That much was very clear. Well, if they continue to struggle, and I think they don't make the playoffs, I think Frank Reich's gone. Now, whether that's during the year or after the season remains to be seen. But if I had to pick one coach to be the next guy fired, it's Frank Reich. Although the Colts are somehow 2-2-1. I mean, I'm sure Pam has every advanced statistic in the history of the world. I bet you she can back me up on this, that they are terrible. Yet somehow they're 2-2-1.
Well, I will also agree. I had Reich written as my option because in the first 6 weeks of the season with him as head coach, 12-15-1 with him as the head coach. But I understand that they've had a new quarterback literally every season. Andrew Luck, Jacoby Brissett, Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan. So how much of that is the ownership going to say that it's the head coaching problem, or it's just that they have so much turnover that you can't find consistency? I've been an advocate for this team, for the Colts, all along, and knowing that this has been kind of their MO, where they start off a little slow in the early half of the season and they pick things up in the second half. But I'm not convinced anymore. I've been trying to convince myself of that every single week, and now I'm starting to think, well, Matt Ryan, he ain't it. So then where do we go with that? My guess to be who's going to be the next coach fired would be Ron Rivera, because he's calling out his quarterback in Carson Wentz. He's 1-4 so far this season, back-to-back losing seasons, 14-20 overall. Potential locker room problems right there with the defense. I read an article about defensive end Chase Young that maybe he's gonna not want to come back. I don't know what to make of that situation, but Ron Rivera has like a losing record overall in his career, so it's iffy to either one.
I'm going to go a little bit of a different route here. I'm not sure another coach is fired mid-season, but I'm going to go Cliff Kingsbury. I think they've got a lot of talent there. Look, he's a guy who in college struggled. I'm not even sure that he was 500. If so, he was right around that mark. I get that he's an offensive guy. He's talented. Arizona does have some playmakers. So if anything, I think Cliff Kingsbury would be my guy.
The Colts, Ross, if you need to know, are the worst team overall per DVOA so far this season by a pretty substantial margin. Like, that's well beyond what Carolina has done already. So, yeah, the advanced stats back up what you're seeing with your eyes, that the Colts are absolutely terrible. It was one thing when they could block and rush the passer. Now that they can do neither of those things, the future is not so bright.
Yeah, but Pat, I've heard of DVOA. I need Pam to give me 5 more stats I've never heard of in my entire 43 years on this earth about Jalen Hurts in the third quarter against pressure off his left foot.
It's going to be, I just like the points. Did you hear me say that the Cowboys were going to win outright? No, I like the points at +5.5. This should be a closer game than what the line is saying. Give me that. Give me that, guys.
You can have it. We're good with that. But we haven't talked about the Packers in a while since they beat Tampa and things were going really well. Then they nearly lost at home to Bailey Zappi. That wasn't good news. Then they lost in London to the New York Giants. And now they're 3-2. They're second behind Minnesota in the NFC North. Now they have hosting the red-hot New York Jets and Zach Wilson. We'll see how this one goes. Brian, I want to start with you, though. I have a very hypothetical question. Okay. You don't have to bet these things, but I'm going to say, if you had to put your life savings on one of these two outcomes, which would it be? Okay. The Packers to win the NFC at 6-1, or the Packers to miss the playoffs at +250?
All right. See, that's a tough one. I'm not sure I like either of these, but you're making me make a decision. So if I'm putting my life savings on anything, look, I'm going to go with something that's got a little bit of a higher upside. I know that we're talking about the Eagles here. It's probably not the wisest move. When I look at the schedule, though, the teams that the Packers have lost to, the teams that they have coming up, look, I see them making the playoffs. It's not a question about that. Something would have to happen here. But if it's my life savings, give me something with a little better return. I looked at the game versus the Giants. We're so close to talking about them being 4-1. You had 2 running backs that were averaging over 4.8 yards per carry. And between the two of them, A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones, they have 19 rushing attempts. So to me, on a 3rd and short, on a 4th and 1, use one of those guys, get those yards. And we're sitting here talking Packers being 4-1. So if I'm going to go one, I'm going to go one with a little higher return.
Yeah, not me. I'm going with the Packers to miss the playoffs. I would be stunned if the Packers won the NFC at this point. Now, maybe they figure things out. It's a long season. They do have some young receivers, but there's some very disturbing trends. I mean, even the defense, that it feels like they have a lot of good players. Rashawn Gary's having a great year, and Kenny Clark's a stud, and Jair Alexander's good. They just don't really stop people that much. I mean, Daniel Jones has a bad ankle sprain. Saquon Barkley's out there running the Wildcat right down the Packers' throat. I agree with Brian that the longer odds to win the NFC are enticing, but I think the Minnesota Vikings are winning that division. They already have a head-to-head win over the Packers as well. I think the Vikings win that division, which tells me I'd be shocked if the Packers won the NFC. I think it's more likely that they don't make the playoffs at all. I think these odds are right.
I'm with you on missing the playoffs as well. If you're looking at what they struggled with, the Packers against the Giants, it was against the run. And who do they have next? You got the Bills, you got Tony Pollard and the Cowboys, you have the amazing list of playmakers that you all say the Eagles have, and Dalvin Cook with the Vikings. So and maybe you can even throw in the Lions if they happen to get healthy. But Aaron Rodgers is coming off 5.7 YPA, 2 points in the second half against the Giants. It was not so much even that they allowed the Giants to come back, is that they were nearly shut out in the second half of offensively, which is pretty surprising. So yeah, missed the playoffs for the Packers.
I look at that too. I mean, another thing I looked at, David Bakhtiari played 25 of 63 snaps. So I'm looking at him coming back. I don't like either of these bets, to be honest with you, but I do think the Packers make the playoffs. I think David Bakhtiari, let's get him back in there. I mean, he's a vital piece to that offense and how they run, and let's see where they go from here.
Well, let's go to a really fun game. It's on Thursday night. It's Commanders at Bears. Like, I don't know. I mean, I know Amazon paid all this money, Brian, to the NFL to get these games, but this has not been fun. I mean, I guess Chiefs and Chargers was a lot of fun, but now I guess in order to get the Chiefs, you had to go through this. Like, this is just horrible at this point. The Bears are a 1.5 favorite at home against Washington and Carson Wentz. These are both bottom 5 offenses in terms of DVOA. The good thing about it is these teams make enough mistakes that there could be fun to be had in this game, unlike last week where it was just a slog.
Yeah. These schedule makers, putting the Broncos on as many times as they have has just been kind of embarrassing. And then we've got to suffer through this on Thursday. It's already on Amazon. People have already been complaining because these games have been pretty bad. But between this one, you've got mistake-prone Carson Wentz. On the other side, Justin Fields actually started to look, a little bit more like an NFL quarterback last week, at least completing a number of passes. But yeah, this is one I'm not excited for. I got to be honest.
Y'all gotta stop saying that you're not excited, because in the dead of June next summer, what is everyone going to be wishing they had? Thursday night football. So take what you can get, no matter what team it is, and just enjoy it.
Pam is right, Pat. Pam is right. It's an NFL football game, and it's on TV. Okay, that's why I'm excited about it.
We're talking. It could be hypothetically flipped, right? We could have a better game. I'm not talking about not having football on a Thursday night. Just maybe not the Bears and the Commanders.
Yeah, but they didn't know these two teams would be this. Well, they probably knew the Bears would be this bad. They thought the Commanders would be a little bit better. Listen, all I know is this: 2 thoughts. Number one, Justin Fields, Carson Wentz. They're entertaining every game they play. They are entertaining. They will make a couple of amazing plays and crazy bonehead plays. Like, these guys are 2 of the most entertaining quarterbacks in the NFL. They will throw an interception, each of them. Can we bet on that somewhere?
Yes.
That they each throw an interception directly to a guy on the other team that makes us all drop our jaws. I also says, if you can get a 1.5 somewhere, that's a great teaser leg. Whoever's getting the 1.5, tease them up to 7.5 through the key numbers of 3 and 7, because this is going to be a close game. So if you can get 0.5, the Commanders are getting a 0.5, take them up to 7.5 as a teaser.
I would be looking for sack props, for interception props, for yardage under team, maybe Justin Fields passing yards under. Yeah, you can make a lot of props out of this game. I'm with Ross here about teasing. I hate teasers though. They're so difficult every week. They're so frustrating. But I would actually take Washington +1 because Justin Fields, he has only 49 completions in 5 games. That is mind-boggling to me. And the Bears are going to have to run the ball. Well, guess what? Washington rushing defense is actually pretty good. They have the lowest rate in the league for allowing a rushing attempt to result in either a first down or a touchdown, limiting both the Eagles and the Cowboys to 2.4 and 2.1 yards per carry. I like Washington, and I never like Washington in anything.
Oh, Washington's a lot of fun. You like Washington
The
for
Commanders.
crazy highlights that make no sense. You flick over to the channel, it's like, what the hell is Wentz doing over there? But if you do want to find some teaser legs, I think that Ross is right. You can tease the 1.5 up to 7.5, get through 3, get through 7, and then you just take a look at Thursday Night Football unders are 4-1 already this season, 11-5 last season. Night game so far this season, 10-4 to the under. So you tease up the under, you tease up the Commanders, and boom, there's your 2-leg teaser, Ross.
Exactly. Look, I got a bunch of teaser legs. I know we'll talk about it later in the show. I got a bunch of teaser legs. This is one I would add if you find them for 1.5. I know some places they're only getting a point. You got to get the hook. You got to get through the 7. You got to get the 7.5.
Well, we'll tease the teaser legs for later on in the show, but now the return of one of the newest segments that we have now in week 6, question time. We wanted to hear from you this week, and we did hear from you this week. First up, Scott Stewart asks, are the Minnesota Vikings for real? I'm going to venture a guess that Ross is going to say yes, since he picked them to win the NFC North a little bit earlier on.
They are absolutely for real. I mean, you look, they're better at almost every spot than they were a year ago. There's a reason why they're 4-1 with their only loss to the undefeated Philadelphia Eagles, Pam. Their only loss is to the undefeated Philadelphia Eagles. Vikings are 4-1. In all sincerity, their defense got really bad under Mike Zimmer, and it's been okay this year. They're not a dominant defense, but they're definitely better getting Hunter and Zadarius Smith in the lineup. The offensive line, which has really been what's held them back in recent years, has been good as well. And we already know that they've got awesome skill with their receivers, Jefferson, Thielen, Dalvin Cook at running back, and Kirk Cousins. I know everybody loves to hate on him. He's a top 15 quarterback. There's at least 10 teams that would take him every year, and he's playing like it.
No, the Vikings are not for real. And though, yes, I will agree with Ross that they do have some really good playmakers in Thielen and other players. But you're talking about Kirk Cousins here, and you have to look at who they have faced. Green Bay has already fallen off the wagon. They lost 24-7 to the Eagles, which, okay, they may be a good team, but Kirk Cousins was awful. 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. And then they have wins over the Lions, the Saints, who had Andy Dalton as quarterback and no Alvin Kamara, and the Bears, who don't throw the ball. That's 4 wins, but 3 of them were 1-score games against pretty subpar, mediocre offenses. So by default, yes, they could still win the NFC North because the Packers are packing it up. And then there's the Bears and the Lions. But is this team for real going to make a playoff run, a Super Bowl contender? Absolutely not, but could still be an NFC North winner.
Look, I agree on the playmakers. That's obvious. Justin Jefferson's one of the best receivers in the league, but I agree with Pam here in that, look, with Kirk Cousins, you don't know what you're going to get. It's up, it's down 1 week. I look at them, they're a solid team, but who they've beaten doesn't impress me. I think, the only loss they have is to the powerhouse Eagles there. But, and you look at that, it was, I believe, 24-7. So really the game that they had against good competition, it was one-sided. I'd like to see them beat somebody else before claiming them for real.
Yeah, the Vikings are a huge fan of playing one good half of football and hoping that's enough. 4 out of 5 times, it has been good enough so far this season. We'll see when they take a step up in competition. They're playing the Dolphins this week, but Lord knows who's playing quarterback for the Dolphins because we don't know that as of yet. At Yankee Blow asks, will the Falcons finally lose against the spread, Brian?
I don't think so this week. I know last week I had my doubts, but I think this week they cover. I mean, look, Pat's enjoying this more than anyone right now as far as the Falcons. I'm waiting for this to end, but last week was supposed to be that week, and they played a tough game without Cordero Patterson, so I think they keep it rolling this week.
I'm with you, Brian. At some point, I think that the point spread tax will catch up to them. I mean, you can't just keep winning against the spread every week. The books will adjust, but I don't know that they have this week. I know the Niners are typically pretty good on their back-to-back East Coast games over the last few years, but Nick Bosa has that groin injury. We know Emmanuel Mosley's out with the torn ACL, and we also know that Arthur Smith knows how to coach and that his guys will not stop playing. I'll take the 5.5 on the Falcons again. I'm rolling with Pat's bunch until proven otherwise.
Yeah.
Full game, probably I would lean to the Falcons here for every reason that you guys, I agree. However, I think the trend that you could go with is 49ers to cover in the first half, because in the first 5 games, San Francisco defense has yet to allow a touchdown in the first half this season. They have only given up, the San Fran defense, 4 total field goals. And the Falcons in the first half, they're averaging only 9 points in the first half. Most of the production came against a Seattle defense, which we know is last in the league. So I'm going to lean definitely here to San Francisco covering the first half. And yes, I will admit, the Falcons covering full game.
The points in this game as well are going to be not necessarily at a premium, but the plus side of the points are going to mean a lot more with both these teams wanting to run the ball so much, thus shortening the game. Going to be harder to score an abundance of points. And although San Francisco is the number 1 rushing defense, Atlanta is the number 2 rushing offense, and they don't really pass it very well. So I'd still assume that they're going to try and throw out as many different looks as possible. And as we saw in week 1, Atlanta was able to run the ball no problem against a very stout Saints team who is otherwise shut down the run outside of like a few Rashad Penny goes last week. So I can see Atlanta having success on the ground, shortening the game a little bit, thus making those points even more valuable in a game like this. But that's just me. Don't forget to chime in next week. Just tweet your questions to me, Pam, Brian, or Ross using the hashtag AskTheHuddle and tune in to see if we feature them on next week's show. But it's enough of that. We need to get to Bet or No Bet, brought to you by MyOC Premium. And don't forget to head over to OddsChecker.com and sign up for your very own MyOC Premium account for less than just $1 a day. You'll have access to our gambling experts, exclusive picks for NFL, MLB, college sports, NHL, UFC, NBA, golf, and so much more. The Cowboys got it done, both Moneyline and ATS a week ago. Seattle could not come through against the spread because they decided to go for 2 for absolutely no reason halfway through the game, and it really just screwed everything up. They should have covered that game, although they did not. Ross, we got to start with you because you've been a scorching 4-0 since week 2. What are you looking at for week 6?
There's several teams getting points that I like. The Giants, the Falcons, the Patriots. But the team I like the most, Carolina Panthers. 11 points against the Rams. Cowboys were good for me getting the points against the Rams last week. Listen, the Rams are not good right now. Their offensive line has issues. I think PJ Walker will come out and play even better at quarterback than Baker Mayfield was, which, by the way, isn't real hard to do if you were watching Baker Mayfield. And I also think the Panthers get a little bit of that new coach first game boost. Love the Panthers getting 11 against the Rams. I would be very surprised they don't cover that spread.
I was actually going to go with that same response for the exact same reasons that Ross gave. So instead, I'm going to go with, I'm the one that's bringing the team down. Sorry, guys. Give me a bounce back this week. Give me some points over 53.5 for the Bills and the Chiefs. Casey's defense is pretty bad. 31st in opponent touchdown, red zone scoring percentage, allowing 81% of red zone trips to be converted into a full touchdown, not stopping them for a field goal. Josh Allen and the Bills offense, they have the 4th most red zone attempts. So we know that the Bills are going to be able to put up points. And you give me Mahomes magic, he's going to find a way. 4 touchdowns yesterday for Travis Kelce. Still his number 1 go-to guy, but he still has Juju Smith-Schuster, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, just a variety of players. You put a man downfield, and Mahomes is going to find a way to get it to him. So honestly, any wide receiver works. It's Mahomes. Give me points. 53.5 is the over that I'm going to take.
All right, I'm going to go in a different direction. Ross mentioned quite a few, but I'm going to take Seattle plus 2.5. And, you know, probably in the end, I'll tease it up or tease it down to plus 7.5 and get past the key numbers here. But look, I think Seattle playing at home, I think they've got the better coaching staff. I've been very impressed with what I've seen in Geno Smith and being able to move that offense. Yes, you know, Rashad Penny's down, but it's the next man up there. So I'm going to take that one.
All right, and just a note on Ross mentioning he liked the Patriots. That Kevin Stefanski is 8-16 against the spread as a favorite. As Ross, do you think there's any reason when you see some of these weird stats, like how good Teddy Bridgewater had been as an underdog against the spread, Stefanski is just absolutely putrid as a favorite against the spread? Are there reasons behind this, or is it just happenstance?
So the Stefanski one, it's hard to comment on as a coach. Clearly, with Teddy Bridgewater, he's undervalued. I think a lot of times when they set these lines, they have a value on the quarterback. They compare him to an average quarterback, and I think Teddy Bridgewater pretty obviously is better than the bookmakers have given him credit for over the years. I don't know how to approach the Stefanski one. It feels like the Browns are better when they're underdogs than they are as favorites for whatever reason.
Well, we talked a little bit earlier. We teased it even for the pleasers and teasers. Now, Pam, I want you to start off on this one. If you do have a legs, I know Ross has about 400, and he's probably going to steal yours. So you get out ahead of the game on this one.
Oh man, how about the Saints? Teasing up the Saints +1 to +7, +1.5 to +7.5 at home to the Bengals. As long as the Bengals still have that atrocious offensive line, I still can't trust Joe Burrow to come out with a solid steal away game by more than a touchdown. The Saints defense, I've been really impressed. They have Kamara back. So how about teasing the Saints at home as an underdog with a great defense?
Hey, and I'll take, look, we talked a few earlier, but I like Seattle here. I do. I've been more impressed, and I was very slow to get behind them at all, but teasing that one to +7.5 at home. Like I said, I think they have the better coaching staff. I'm not sure James Conner is going to play, and Arizona's just been kind of anemic this year.
Brian, Pam, you are both 100% correct. Those are two of the four teasers I really like this week. I love Seattle up to 8.5. Love the Saints up to 8. I like taking the Tampa Bay Bucks down to 2.5. I don't know that they'll blow out the Steelers, but man, I'd be surprised if they lost that game. I'll also take the Jaguars up to 8.5 against the Colts. Remember, we talked about this earlier. The Colts stink, right? Remember, we all tried to fire Frank Reich earlier in the show. Well, if we're going to fire Frank Reich, they got to be bad against the Jags. So I got 4 teaser legs I really like. Pair them as you wish.
Remember, the Colts are now 0-7 against the Jags. And they're
Yikes.
I just can't believe that they're favored in any game. I get that it's against the Jags, but it's mind-boggling to see a minus next to the Indianapolis Colts at this point in time. But tune into the Week 7 edition of the Huddle to see if the Colts were actually able to come through. So, for Ross, for Pam, for Brian, I'm Pat Mayo. And before I let you go, I want to tell you about the Spread Challenge, our way of giving you a chance to win $100 on us by simply predicting 3 spreads correctly. Shout out to T Grant 18, who gets the Patriots, Giants, and Bengals correctly and was last week's winner. There are 3 free and easy steps to get involved. First, you must follow our Instagram page at OddsChecker-US. Next, find and like our pinned post with this week's spreads. Then, the hard part. Pick the spread correctly on 3 different games, and if you go perfect 3 for 3, you're automatically entered to win $100. So follow us, like the post, put in your picks, and good luck.